Everyone, David here with a new S.H.I.E.L.D. review. I'm going to make this one a little quick. I have to kind of get things going for the night and call it a night because I have to wake up early in the morning for work. So, new episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the third one in season 5. This is after the two-parter that was the season premiere, and this one's called A Life Spent. And this is part of the mantra that's kind of going around this lighthouse, which is pretty much this whole post-apocalyptic station that we found our characters in. And the whole a life spent, a life earned. In fact, I looked ahead. I kind of spoiled myself a little and saw that episode 4 is called a life earned. So there's a double back going there. There's like a companion type theme going where I feel like things that are happening in this first episode are going to be somewhat wrapped or paid back in the second episode. And I'm looking forward to that because this episode kind of progressed more of where we find our characters because it was almost like divided into threes. And we had Daisy doing her thing and trying to recon the place to try to figure out a way to get her friends out and hopefully progress forward. And then we had Simmons kind of doing her thing within the ranks of the Kree and trying to help out a little girl who happened to be an Inhuman. And then we had Coulson doing some this thing with May and Mac, as well as the new girl here, Tess, who are trying their bestest to find some kind of external force beyond Fitz, because at this point I feel like it's going to be a while before we see what Fitz is up to, trying to find some kind of signal. And in my opinion, the whole thing with Coulson's team going out into the deepest reaches of space and trying to find a signal via Virtual's little radio thing, that was to me the most intriguing storyline on a storytelling perspective, because it kind of progressed things forward and had that MacGuffin, as they call it, from the Hitchcock days. It had that one item that kept me going, it kept me intrigued, like I said, on a story level perspective, because it was like, wow, this is a brand new thing. We're not just staying in the same lighthouse, we're still seeing the same kind of environments or whatever. We're going to the notions like we've seen before. Here, we're seeing someone making some kind of someone's talking back from the surface of what we thought was just a completely obliterated Earth, and they're referring to Coulson. Like Coulson says, they were expected. I'm like, okay, that has me intrigued. That has to be the big focus point, as, like I said, the MacGuffin of this entire story. To me, however, the weakest aspect was Daisy going around kind of doing the things that she's done before in past seasons. Going around, there's some kind of secondary character, in this instance it was Deke, going around being like, you can't do this, yes I can, no I can't do this, yes I can. It's like that back and forth that I've heard a number of times before. I don't hate it, but I just feel like we're getting a little redundant with her character. And it gets a little intriguing later on, where she kind of brings up a theory that I actually had somebody post a comment in my last review saying that maybe Quake herself was not the one that caused the Earth to split so many years ago. This other person, I'm so sorry, dude, I cannot, or girl, I can't remember, I don't know if it's a guy or a girl, but I can't remember their username. But somebody posted a comment in my last review saying that it's possible that maybe it was Black Bolt who might have shared some kind of involvement with the Earth being split apart, because it was his power that is that strong enough to be able to split the world apart. And Daisy herself makes a reference to not exactly Black Bolt per se, but to the theory that maybe something else could have destroyed the world because she's just not that strong. And I'm like, ooh, is this a way for the writers to kind of leave that door open, saying, yeah, it might happen, it's a possibility? That would be rather intriguing, especially since not only are we taking into account the Kree, but also the whole process of pterogenesis in humans. And as this episode kind of cemented that with the involvement of Simmons having some kind of interconnection with this Inhuman that she's helping out. At first I thought, again, kind of feeding into that whole storyline that we've seen before with Simmons helping some character out because she's the compassionate one, she's the more sympathetic one. And I was really sympathizing with this little girl who was having the seizures and her pterogenesis backstory and how her powers were rather cool, and once she got to control him, I was kind of right there with her. So, but at the same time, I felt like it was just a tiny bit vanilla. So it was to my surprise that S.H.I.E.L.D. held no holds back when it came to her gladiator fight with that Bane lookalike monstrosity there that was at the end. And they did not hold back. He was beating the shit out of this little girl, and I was expecting it and not expecting it at the same time. So it was when it was happening, I was like, holy shit, god damn, I'm seeing this kid being thrown around, beaten up, kicked out. Man, The S.H.I.E.L.D. from season 1 would not have dared gone into that territory, but they did. And then they took it a step further by having her kind of harness her powers, which, albeit, was a tiny bit predictable, but the way it played out, I still dug it. I give it a pass because of how she took out this guy. First, by possibly paying an homage to Luke Cage with the whole slow motion breaking of the hand. Of course, it's not going to go into the darker territory of having the bones stick out. I felt like they could have done that, but it was either that or the following shot that we saw of her arm being inside of him and then pulling it out. I think it had to be an ultimatum because ABC was like, you can only do one of those. We can't do both. Otherwise, this shit would be 14 Walking Dead territory. So we can't do that. And it was to be that, or we would have to move it to a later time slot, like at 11 or something like that. So they had to compromise. And in my opinion, they went with the cooler shot. So I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm digging that. And I guess I could use this as a segue to something that was very impressive, not only in this episode, but in the last one. And for some reason, I forgot to mention it in the review, and I apologize. But the visual effects are on point this season. They last very little on screen, but when they're on screen, they deliver. I'm like, these are some damn good effects for a TV show, especially when we have some kind of exterior shot in outer space with the ship, especially with whichever ship that's called, that May and company are taking out, kind of excavating the rocks and just exploring outer space, and the way that the light would kind of reflect off of that ship. That's more realistic than some of the shit we get in the big screen. But just like I said that the whole Coulson radio transmission storyline was the most intriguing one on a storytelling perspective, it was the Simmons one with that little girl that was a bit more impactful from an emotional standpoint because of the little girl and her experience with Genesis and that whole thing. Again, she's what drives the sympathizing nature of the entire show. And you have the one girl with the two balls who was silent the entire time, and the one line she has is the word compassion, and I feel like that's very emblematic of what Simmons is and what kind of direction they could take her with this show, especially when you're dealing with very unsympathetic characters like the Kree. So I thought that was a really cool and interesting dynamic. However, it came at the expense of Daisy's storyline being kind of redundant, and sure, she had a cool fight scene in the elevator with the two Kree, but I didn't feel like it stood out. Even the way it kind of wraps up at the end there with Deke selling her out, even though I get the feeling that the selling out is part of the plan. It's predictable either way. It's kind of a catch-22. It's predictable if it turns out that he's was just playing the part so that he can get her out later on to kind of keep her safe. Otherwise, she would be killed in a much worse way if he hadn't intervened. Or if he is in fact a backstabber, then okay, well there goes that character. There's nothing. There could not be anything interesting to be done with them because it's like, oh look, another villain or a secondary villain that they're gonna have to deal with. Even though I'm willing to bet an awful lot of money on him just playing cards, just like he always does, because he's that roguish character, and they're gonna have to do something just a little different with him to make things a little interesting. Otherwise, at this point, I'm gonna be able to telegraph his movements from episode to episode. So I'm gonna say that this episode didn't change my mind about what they're doing in the long run for our characters to be in this setting or this time period, and we still haven't caught up with Fitz, so that's a little bit of a letdown. I'm not expecting that to come anytime soon at this point, so that's a downer, but I think that this episode kind of moved the door slightly more ajar for opportunities to do much more interesting things. Like, it didn't close it. It made me go, oh my god, we're stuck here. We're stuck with these characters. We're stuck with the setting. I feel like there's still room for improvement, and this kind of elevated that. So I'm going to be giving A Life Spent yet another solid 8 out of 10. I believe I gave the premiere, the two-part premiere, an 8 out of 10, and this kind of continues in that vein, just slightly higher in quality, only because it presented opportunities for us to kind of do things a little bit new in what could be a setting that might label this season so far. Even I know it's only been 3 episodes, but I'm really hoping that I don't end up saying that season 5 was not exactly one of my favorite seasons. But there's still room for the show to kind of grow from this point forward. So anyways, enough of my ramblings. Pretty tired. I'm going to be going to bed now. Please let me know in the comments what you guys thought of episode 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 5. What do you think is going to happen from this point forward? Do you think that it's getting kind of stagnant, or are you not being hyped up because of the setting? You were looking for something a little bit different and new? Let me know all of your thoughts. Make sure to support the video by hitting the like and share button, and subscribe for future S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews, as well as the Star Wars review coming very, very soon. Last Jedi, that's what I'm talking about. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Signing off now, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all later. Just take it. Just take the sauce, whatever it is.
You're so stressed out.
Wait. Let me go get a tomato. Get a tomato.
You're so I can't.
Fuck! No, what are you doing?
Sorry, it was an accident. Sorry. You're.
Hold on. No, stop. Stop. You're getting in my head. Okay.